About 2 to 3 months before a wedding that you're photographing, you should reach out to your couple to start putting together a wedding day timeline. Having a well-designed wedding timeline can really be the difference between having an amazing wedding and a really slow and stressful one. So today I'm going to walk you through all of the questions that I ask all of my couples to get all of the information that I need to put together the best wedding day timeline. You can ask these questions in an in-person meeting, or you can do what I do, which is send them a questionnaire via a client relations manager so they can fill it out at their own pace. And then I have all of their answers really easy to find when I'm actually making the physical timeline. So let's get right into it. So this is what it looks like when the couple opens it, and I'm gonna walk through each bit. So at the top we have main contacts. So I have the bride's name, last name, groom's name, last name, and both their phone numbers. So this is key because having the phone numbers is not something that I always get for both people. Sometimes I only have the bride's phone number or only the groom's phone number. So this is my chance to get everything. And also their phone numbers may have changed between the time that you booked them versus the time that their actual wedding happens. Then I have their maid of honor's name, maid of honor's phone number, and the best man's name and the best man's phone number. Again, for all pretty much the same reasons. The key with the best man and maid of honor is it's good to have a secondary contact. So say, for example, you're at a wedding and you cannot find the groom and he's not answering his phone. At that point, I would be calling the best man, which I now have his phone number, to say, yo, where's the groom at? Let's get this going. That actually does happen sometimes, so having all the phone numbers you can really does help. So then I have the mother and father of the bride, mother and father of the groom. I don't get phone numbers for them generally because I don't want to have to bug the parents on a wedding day. I'd much rather bug the best man and maid of honor. You'll also notice here that I have a very intentional instruction, which is that if they have step parents, I want them to indicate those as well as what the names of the step parents are. And this is really important because you want to avoid any kind of awkward tension that some family dynamics might bring up. So if the bride, for example, has a stepfather and they don't tell you that or you don't ask for it, you might find yourself in a situation where you put them in a picture together and they might not necessarily want that. So just make sure you ask all that stuff beforehand to make sure you avoid any kind of uncomfortable situations. Next, the obvious ones, locations and times. So the first one is ceremony name and address for pretty obvious reasons. I also ask for when does the ceremony start and when does the ceremony end. And I do the same thing for the reception. I ask for those first because typically those times are the ones that are the least flexible. So the ceremony start and end time and the reception start time are generally fixed, and because of that, I'll use those as a starting point to build the rest of the timeline around. The next thing I ask as well is what time does the wedding party need to be at the reception? Because usually the reception start time is different than the time that the couple actually needs to get there. Usually you'll be on a party bus for about 45 minutes to an hour after the reception has started. So this gives my couples a really clear way to indicate what those two times are. The next one that's really important is, will you have a first look? That's key because whether or not they have a first look will make a really big difference in how you plan out the pre and post ceremony pictures. So you have to make sure that you ask that question. Next one is, where will the bride and bridesmaids be getting ready? Please include addresses. I had to make sure I say please include addresses because sometimes a couple might just say the name of the place they're getting ready at. They might say my mom's house, but they don't indicate where her mom's house is. So by saying please include addresses, that generally makes sure that they will include everything. I also ask for the time that the bride and bridesmaids will be getting ready. Again, just so I know this is when they're getting ready, and so I can use that as a gauge for about what time I'm gonna wanna start to arrive. Next thing, I ask, will the groom and groomsmen simply show up dressed and ready to go to the ceremony, therefore not having photos of them getting ready. The reason I word the question in that way is because some of my couples want groomsmen pictures getting ready, but a lot of them don't. And I find that if a couple doesn't want pictures of the groom getting ready, but you ask them, where is the groom getting ready? That can sometimes bring in some confusion. So the first thing I ask is a yes or a no. If they answer no, then that will tell them to ask or to fill in where are they going to be getting ready and what time. So that just helps kind of ease some of that confusion. The next one, again, really important, is the wedding party. So the first one is, who are all of the bridesmaids? And I asked them to do one name per line. So they'll say, Mary Jane, and then I'll return, go Elizabeth Foster. I don't know, I'm just using random names. But I do that so that when I look at this questionnaire, when I'm making the timeline, there's no question in my mind on where does someone's name start and where does someone's name end. That's really key. I also ask for full names because sometimes you'll have a couple bridesmaids or groomsmen with the same first name but different last names, and so that helps me put that group together a bit better. Next thing is, where are the personal attendants? Same deal. And the same things all apply for the groomsmen and the ushers. It's just for me to get the names of all the people so that I can put together pre-designed groupings to let my couple look at and see if that's something they want to go forward with. Next one is family. So one of the things at the top here is I made sure to specifically say that if you have members of the wedding party that are also family, I want them in this box. What I found would happen sometimes is, say one of the groomsmen was the bride's brother. They would put the groomsman's name, the brother's name, in this box, but not indicate that that's her brother. And then for family, she would omit his name because she already put it down in the groomsmen's section. And then for me, I have no idea that she has a brother. So I asked them to include members of the wedding party just to make sure that, again, everyone is accounted for. I also made sure to ask for relationships because, again, I don't know who your mom and dad are or who your siblings or your nieces and nephews are. I don't know that just by their names. So by asking for that, that gives me the tools to, again, make the grouping so that way the couple can see it and decide if it's a photo that they want. Same deal with the groom's family as well. So then the last thing is, during family formals, are there any people not part of family or the wedding party that you would like photos with? And this is for people like the officiant, or if you have a host couple, or let's say you have a friend that's not in the wedding party or part of a family that you want a picture with. This is the time for you to put those people down so that I can put them in the list. I'd like to try to cover as many things as possible so that way we can do as little adding on the day as possible. This is definitely probably the most important section of this questionnaire. Okay, so we move on to post-ceremony. So this is everything, obviously, after the ceremony. The first thing I ask for is, after your ceremony concludes, what will happen afterwards? A receiving line, a bubble exit, be as specific as you would like. This is good because depending on what your couple wants to do after their ceremony, that will largely dictate the action you have to take immediately after the ceremony. So if you're having a receiving line, it's going to take a lot longer to get through than, say, a bubble exit. So knowing that beforehand is really key. And the next thing that I ask for is, will they have a party bus? Because again, whether or not they have a party bus will dictate how long they're going to be away from the reception for and how much time you need to allocate for that. So if they answer yes, I ask for where is it going to go and for about how long are we going to be on the bus. So in my area in Nebraska, what usually happens is we'll get on the bus, drive for a bit, stop at a bar, stop at a photo location, maybe 2 photo locations, and then head to the reception. I find that takes about an hour, so I usually allocate about an hour or an hour and a half, depending on what the couple wants to do. So that's what we go in there. After that, I just ask, is there anything special you would like to do after the ceremony before we go to the reception? So again, this gives the couple a chance to explain any ideas they might have. I had a couple where they did not read their vows during the ceremony. They instead opted to read their vows in private after the ceremony. It was amazing, one of my favorite things I've ever seen at a wedding, but this is where they indicate to me that that's something that they're going to do. So it's important to have those little sections in there where the couple can kind of just talk and bounce ideas off of you. Okay, so then we get to the reception. Now, the reception timeline isn't quite as important because typically the DJ will be taking care of most of the nighttime stuff, but I still like to get the couple thinking about all the things that are gonna happen. So what I have here is a list of what I found to be the most common events at a reception. So we have the grand entrance, the cake cutting, toasts, first dances, bouquet toss, garter toss, and the dollar dance. And these are just check boxes so the couple can just pick whatever ones they want to include. Then I have a box here for anything else that was not included before. Sometimes they have a special tradition and they want to add something that isn't very traditional. So that's the place for that. Then we come to the conclusions. This is the end of it. So I asked, are there any special details unique to your wedding day that you would like to have special attention given to? And I gave the example of like custom tie clips, custom cufflinks, whatever. And this is really key because when you're showing up to a wedding and you're looking at the details, sometimes there might be a little thing that, unless you're told is important, you might not think is important. There might be a necklace just sitting somewhere that is super important to the bride, but that you have no idea. You would not have guessed that unless she had told you it. So this gives both the bride and the groom the chance to say, hey, I'm gonna have this thing from my great grandma that's really, really important, and I wanna make sure that we include that in our detail shots. That's huge. I wanna make sure I don't miss any of that stuff right in the beginning. And then we have, is there anything not covered in this questionnaire that you would like added to your timeline? And this is just a catch-all at the very end in case there's any questions that I may or may not have asked that they want to answer. This just gives them the chance that, hey, if there's something that they've been thinking about, it gives me a chance to see it and we can address it beforehand. And the last one is I ask for the name and contact info of each of the vendors. Again, for a lot of the same reasons as I do the main contacts at the top. It's just so that way I have all the names of the people that I'm gonna be working with directly on the day, and that's super key. But those are all the questions that I ask my couples, and then from here, we would actually go to put the physical timeline together. So I'm gonna show you how I do that in just a second. So once the questionnaire has been submitted, now I have all the info that I need to actually make their timeline. So what I have on my computer is a real timeline from a real wedding, but I changed all the names just for privacy. So this is what it looks like. And at the top, we have the wedding date, the couple name, and that it's a photography timeline. Then I have my name and info as the primary photographer, as well as my second shooter if I have one for that day. Then I just have everyone's name and phone number listed out so it's all in one nice place, and the names of the parents. And the reason I have the parents' names on different lines is because sometimes, depending on what their names are, it's not immediately apparent who's the mom and who's the dad. So having it like this helps me not mess it up, because you don't want to do that on a wedding if you can avoid it. Then I have all of the addresses. So the ceremony, reception, bride prep, and groom prep. Again, this is great so that we all have the same information. We're not gonna go to the wrong place. Okay, so now we're at the actual timeline. I actually wanna start in the middle instead of at the beginning, because you remember, I mentioned that the ceremony start and reception start times are usually all fixed. And because of that, I like to start there and then work around that. So for this wedding, we had a 3 p.m. ceremony start time, and I'm gonna use that time to work backwards. So this couple had a first look, and this particular bride had a first look with her dad, with her husband, and her brother. So I had to account for that before the formal pictures. So what that means is a 3 p.m. start time. I want at least half an hour before that as the wrap time for pictures. So by 2:30 p.m., I wanna have everything done. What that means, I need to give myself 1 hour for formal pictures. That's usually all that it ever takes me. I'm really fast at doing those. So I say 1:30 p.m. for the family and wedding party photos. Then I have 1:15 as the call time for formal photos. That is the time that I want my couple to tell everyone. So that way, anyone who's gonna show up late might actually show up on time. And this is good because typically I do the wedding party photos first, and the wedding party is usually always there because we've been doing getting ready pictures. It's the family that can sometimes take a little bit. So 1:30 is the start time for that, which means I know that the way that I shoot, a first look and portraits usually only takes about half an hour. So I wanna give myself a 1 p.m. start time for that. So then I work backwards to get to my 11 a.m. photo coverage start time. Now that time came from the time that they gave me in the questionnaire. I think for this bride, they started getting ready at about 8 in the morning. Now, you usually don't need to show up right when the bride is getting ready because usually at the very beginning, they are not in makeup, their hair is not done, and they really don't want pictures yet. So I always show up a bit later after that. So for this wedding, it made sense for me to do 11 a.m., but I can always move that around if we need to. I really don't worry about the time too much. I also have a note here that we are starting at the church, not at the bride prep location. And I also have a note here that we are going to do a first look with the bridesmaids. And the reason that this is not included with the rest of the first looks is because the bridesmaids one can kind of happen whenever it needs to. And in fact, at this wedding, their first look actually happened after the rest of the other first looks. So that's kind of just how things go sometimes. I also have a note for myself for the special prep details. So for this case, she had all of her accessories, wanted an invite picture, and her bouquet also had a rosary and her great grandma's brooch. So I knew that I had to focus on those elements just so I don't forget them. And then I have when my second shooter starts, again, I use kind of the same methodology there. Usually guys take way less time to get ready, so you can be a little more flex with that. Okay, so that's the start of the day. Now we have the most important part of the timeline, which is all the pictures for formal photos. So I am very formulaic when it comes to this. I have a lot of things already figured out in my head. And what I do for my couples is I put together a predetermined list of pictures, and they go through that and decide if they want to change. It's a lot easier for my couple to do that once I've already done the groundwork of putting together a preliminary list. Usually it takes 2 or 3 changes. So with the wedding party, this is pretty straightforward. What I'll do is I will do the bride plus the groom plus their bridesmaids plus their groomsmen plus their ushers plus their personal attendants if they have them. This wedding did not, plus any ring bearers and flower girls. I try to do the first big wedding party picture right at the beginning. That gets everyone in the venue that I'm going to be using for pictures so I can just grab them really quickly. Then I break it down. I take away the ushers and flower girls, so just bridesmaids and groomsmen. Then I do bride and groom plus bridesmaids, then groom plus bridesmaids, then bride plus bride plus bridesmaids. That's a lot of bride. And then I break down the bridesmaids group into individuals. So I do the bride with each of her bridesmaids, and then I will do the bride plus groom plus their flower girls and ring bearer. Usually the ring bearers and flower girls are the nieces and nephews of the couple, usually, but I include them in the wedding party pictures just to be safe. So then we do the exact same thing for the groom side. So I have the bride and the groom plus the groomsmen, bride plus the groomsmen, groom plus the groomsmen, and then groom plus the groomsmen plus the ushers. And then I break it all down again into the individual pictures. At the very end, this couple had a host couple, so we did their picture at the end. If, for example, the couple wanted a photo with their officiant, I'd probably do it at this time as well. You'll also notice I have a dot here for any special shots. And this is because everyone forgets something. And so this gives me a chance to remind the couple that, hey, if there are any other wedding party pictures you want, let's do it now, okay? Then we go to family, and this is the fun one. So for family, again, I have a formula kind of figured out for this. And usually how I do that is I start with the immediate family. And in this case, we had just a set of parents and some siblings. So what I'll do is I will alternate between bride and groom plus some people, and then just the bride and those people. So in this case, I had the bride plus their groom plus the immediate family. And then I do the same picture without the groom, just to cover all the bases. And this happens really quick on the actual day. Once we have the group picture done, I break it up into the individual sections. Then we do bride plus groom plus the parents, and then we do individuals with the parents. do the siblings, and then sometimes we can do the individual siblings. It just depends if they want that or not. This couple did not. Then we do grandparents, and then the bride with the grandparents, and then we had some extended family. So usually for extended family, I don't get super specific on the details. I just say, in this case, Hall family, I think I had that somewhere else. Yeah, King family. I usually keep it pretty broad because that will start to get crazy if we're doing tons of individual pics with extended family. Then I have the great-grandma, a couple great-grandmas, and some grandpas. In the blue here, I put these because these people may or may not show up. So this way, when I see that these are blue, I know that they don't have to happen. They might not happen that day, so I'm not worried if they don't happen, and the couple isn't either. Then again, any special shots. And then I do all of the same thing for the groom's family. So immediate family, broken up into parents and siblings. Let's see, he had grandparents, so we do all that, and then we have any special shots. So by doing that, I find that this particular grouping of people strikes a good balance between having enough pictures, but also not having too many. One of the keys to making formals run faster is not having so many pictures. This looks like a lot, but realistically, it really isn't that many pictures. You know, each of these individual pictures maybe takes a couple of seconds to do, and if you're really quick, you can get through this stuff in an hour, easy. So by being intentional about when you break up into individuals, that can really speed up the time that it takes to do that. Okay, so again, at 2:30, we have everything wrapped up. Ceremony starts, then we have the ceremony end time. Now in this case, this couple did not really do anything after the ceremony, otherwise I would have put it at ceremony end. We do, however, have a party bus, and I usually give myself 15 minutes after that because usually when the ceremony is over, it takes some time. Even with the party bus, if you're just going right to it, it takes some time for everyone to get ready, get their coats on. This is a November wedding, so it took a bit, but 4 o'clock as the start time. And in this case, we went to a park for pictures and a bar to hang out. Now in this case, because it was November, sunset happens very early in November. In this case, the actual sunset was at 5:08 p.m. That is very early. So I told myself, okay, 4:30 is sunset pictures. So we're gonna do all of those with the couple before the reception. Usually that would happen during... I just got a package. All right, where was I at? Okay, so sunset pictures I did at 4:30 because I wasn't going to be able to do them at the reception where I normally would. So we do that there. I like to have the actual sunset time as well, so that we have that for reference. So then we have the reception start at 5 o'clock. Again, that's a fixed time, but this 5:45 is when the couple actually arrives. That means we had a little over almost 2 hours on the party bus. So they arrive at 5:45, and at this point, I kind of stop with the actual specific times. I just list out what I'm expecting to happen. So in this case, this couple had a grand entrance, the cake cutting, toast, first dances, bouquet toss, and some extra family pictures. And again, those are all the things that I had in that checklist earlier. This just gives me a reference for, hey, we need to do all of these things before I leave. Usually your DJ will have an actual timeline for that date. Now, I wanna say too, if you were doing sunset pictures during this time, you would wanna position them between one of these things. What tends to happen in Nebraska is these sunset photos will happen right after, usually during dinner. So usually after cake cutting, but during dinner, sometime around there, before the toast and first dances. Because usually once the first dances start, I don't want to take the couple away from that unless I have to. For really midsummer weddings where the sunset's maybe not till like 9 p.m., I might not have to do sunset pictures until open dance floor. Which by open dance floor, I don't mind asking the couple to pull away for that. And they usually want to as well. But in this case, we did sunset at 4:30, and then we have the reception starting at 5:45, and then we do everything. So then I have my coverage ending time. So for this time, it was 9 p.m. I come to that just by feel, mostly. Given everything that is here, I know that's probably going to take about 3 hours, And I use that so that way the couple's not worrying about doing everything super fast. I don't want my couples to have to schedule their day around me. I want them to do the night as they want to. So for me, my end time was 9 p.m. So now the timeline's done. But what I can do now is, because I have an end time, now I can go back to the beginning and look at my start time and think about how many hours that is. So for this day, it was a 10-hour day. That for me is very normal. But say, for example, it has somehow gotten to like a 15 or a 16-hour day, which has happened before, then I might want to consider making some adjustments. You can talk to your couple about that. But now you have a start and an end time and you have everything in between, you can send this whole thing to your couple, have them look at it, and they can make adjustments. Usually it takes 2 or 3 tries for me to get it right. And then once you have that, then one of the biggest, most important pieces of information is done. They can send this to their wedding party, send this to all their vendors, and now everyone is on the same page. But one of the takeaways I want you to get from this is how I planned out the rough time, so the ceremony start time, and how I worked backwards from that. Knowing how you do that is really important, because sometimes way before the wedding, a couple might ask you, hey, what time should we all be ready by? Which is a tough question to answer like 8 months before a wedding, but it happens, you get it sometimes, and you want to be able to answer that. So by knowing that you want half an hour before ceremony, 1 hour for pictures, half an hour for first look, which means you should be ready by this whatever time, that is a good thing to be able to do for your couple very quickly with limited information. So all they have to tell you is, our ceremony is at this time, when should all this be? Having a formula really helps be consistent, and it helps you get used to the flow of a wedding, so that way you're not taken by surprise. I find that this way of doing it also plans a good amount of buffer time just naturally. So that way, if things start running behind, you're really not missing that much, because usually the first look doesn't usually take 30 minutes. So that's an area where we have some buffer time. But anyway, guys, that is everything that I do for my timeline. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. And if you have other suggestions, please let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from everybody. But that is all I have. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.